Hello friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're considering going on a trip along Australia's east coast but have absolutely no idea how to plan it or how to start organising it, then this video is packed full of suggestions, hostel recommendations and non-biased, genuine advice on the best activities the East Coast has to offer. Everything I say is because I genuinely want you to have the best experience on the East Coast and help you find the best deals. To make it easier for you guys, I'm going to link every activity and every hostel that I mentioned throughout this video in the description box so that you have enough resources to help you decide where you want to stay and what you want to do. As well as that, I'm going to be talking about pricing wherever possible to help you budget your trip. And I've also got a full travel series of when I did the East Coast, which you can check out after this video. Shameless little self-promotion there. I hope you're comfortable. Get a seat, grab a drink, get your pen and paper ready because this is going to be a long and very informative video. I can't wait to share with you all of my knowledge about the East Coast of Australia. Now, when it comes to traveling the East Coast of Australia, there's one thing that you should know. It is huge. The distance between Sydney and Cairns is 3,150 kilometers. That is a huge distance to travel, and you can decide whether you want to travel up the coast or down the coast. The route that I did was from Melbourne up to Cairns, but some people can do it the other way around and travel from Cairns down to Melbourne. Whatever route you decide to take is completely up to you. You're still going to see all of the same things and have the most amazing time. One of the first things that you're going to want to think about is how you travel the East Coast. The most common mode of transport on the East Coast of Australia is the bus services. So there is Premier and the Greyhound, which are the two most common bus services which offer a hop on, hop off ticket. So you can hop on in Sydney, for example, and travel all the way up the coast, getting off at each destination that you want to stop at, staying there for a couple of days and hopping back on the bus and carrying on your journey. Domestic flights within Australia aren't that cheap, and so the bus is definitely the most bank account friendly way to get around. The Premier bus ticket, which is the one that I did to save money, costs $330, and the Greyhound bus, which is a slightly more, I guess, luxurious bus, but honestly there's absolutely no difference whatsoever, that one costs $469. I know that sounds like a huge amount of money. Once you've got that bus ticket booked, you are pretty much set wherever you want to go along the East Coast. As you can see from the map, there are so many destinations along the East Coast for you to choose from, and everywhere offers something different. I didn't stop everywhere along the East Coast. I'm just going to talk in detail about the places that I did, and we are going to start with my favorite place ever, Melbourne. When I was in Melbourne, I joined the Welcome to Travel tour, which is an 8-day all-inclusive incredible tour of Melbourne and Phillip Island. It was one of the best things that I did while I was in Australia. I made friends for life on this tour, and it's specifically set up for first-time travelers or people who have just arrived in Australia, as the organisers, Adam and Daryl, help you to integrate into Australian life. They will help you set up a bank account, they will help you get your phone SIM set up, they will help you find a job or plan your whole entire East Coast itinerary out, which really saves you the whole pressure and stress of doing all of that stuff by yourself. Welcome to Travel runs an 8-day tour or a 4-day tour, so depending on how much money you want to spend in Melbourne, there are options for you. So for the 8-day Welcome to Travel tour, it's 899 Australian dollars, and for the 4-day tour, it is 299 Australian dollars. Use code GAYASTRAY for $50 off your order, and of course be sure to check out my Welcome to Travel vlog down in the description box from when I did the tour. It was one of the best weeks of my life, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Also in Melbourne, you've got incredible food, beautiful cafes, some of the best coffee in the world, art museums, theatre, botanical gardens. You've got the Great Ocean Road, Phillip Island, which is included on the Welcome to Travel tour, but you can also organise your own trip there where you can learn to surf, watch the penguin parade. There are so many things to do in Melbourne, so I would definitely recommend spending a week especially if it's your first destination in Australia, because we all know the jet lag is going to be real. Now, when you get to Melbourne, you're going to want to stay in a hostel. Because Melbourne is where I spent most of my time, I have a lot of hostel recommendations for you guys. I was recommended on Facebook to talk about hostels, specifically whether or not you want to stay in somewhere very chilled out and relaxed but sociable, or a complete mad party crazy hostel. So I'm going to try and list the two different types of hostels for each location that I go through along the east coast to help you decide what kind of place you want to stay in and which places you might want to avoid if you want to get a decent night's sleep. So if you want a chilled out, central, easygoing hostel, I would definitely recommend the YHA. It's not a crazy party atmosphere, but it is really clean. It has all of the facilities that you need, and you will make a lot of friends there. If you want to stay somewhere that's really central, that also has a good social nightlife scene and activities with the hostel, I recommend United Backpackers. It's got a bar downstairs, it's got a beautiful big kitchen, it's the most central hostel in Melbourne that I have found. And then you've got Base in St Kilda, which is a 10-minute tram ride outside of the city in the beautiful beachy suburb of St Kilda, which is stunning. Base St Kilda is a total party hostel. It's really hectic. If you like to drink and party and go on crazy bar crawls and be hungover all the time, I highly recommend Base St Kilda. It depends where you want to stay on how much you're going to pay price wise for the hostels. Roughly $25 to $30 per night in Melbourne. Moving on to Sydney. Sydney is by far the most iconic and Instagrammable city in Australia, because of course you've got the Opera House, you've got the Harbour Bridge, Bondi Beach, Coogee Beach, Manly Beach, and of course incredible nightlife. You'll never be stuck for something to do in Sydney, and I would recommend 4 to 5 nights. Wherever you end up staying in Sydney, I'm sure that the hostel will offer a free walking tour of Sydney or some sort of activities to get you out and about in the city. Walking tours are a really good way to meet other backpackers if you're traveling solo, and even if you're not, it's a really great way to join in and see the city, and of course get those all important Instagram pictures. You know, we all need that Instagram pic while we're in Sydney. If you're interested in doing a tour or booking onto a tour while you're in Sydney, I recommend looking into Intro Travel. I didn't do the tour myself, but I know a couple of people who worked for the company, and I know a couple of people who did the tour. They say really great things about it, all really great things, so I'll leave it linked down in the description box below. One thing I will say about these groups and tours that I'm signposting you guys to: make your own decisions. When it comes to backpacking in Australia, there's a lot of travel agencies that will try and sell you trips, and so what I will say is just look out for anyone who's trying to sell you a trip unnecessarily. You can make your own mind up exactly what you want to do, where you want to go, and how much money you want to spend, and do not part with your money if you are on a budget. So back to staying in Sydney. I stayed in Base Hostel in Sydney CBD, which is incredibly central, very affordable, and was attached to Scary Canaries, which is one of the biggest and best backpacker bars in Sydney. So if you like great nightlife, stay at Base. I wouldn't say it's a crazy party hostel, but there's definitely a chance that you'll be in a room with people who are going to end up going out for the night, coming in at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So if you're someone who likes to chill out and relax, get a good night's sleep, I'll go through some other hostels for you. A really great hostel recommendation I have for Sydney is Secret Garden Backpacker. It's a very intimate hostel. I think there's only like 20 rooms or something, so there's not that many people staying there, and they've got a really cute little courtyard in the hostel that everyone just hangs out in. You've also got the YHA Sydney Central, which is right by Central Station. Super easy to get to and from buses or trains if you need to move around Sydney. While you're in Sydney, I highly suggest getting out of the city as much as possible. The city is great, don't get me wrong, but all of the best parts of Sydney are in the suburbs. So you've got Newtown, which is like really hippy dippy, cute little restaurants, vegan food. You've got Bondi Beach, Coogee Beach, Luna Park. Of course, if you've got a spare day free in Sydney, I would recommend the Blue Mountains. And all of this is accessible by bus or train You will need an Opal card if you plan on taking public transport in Sydney, which is free to get, but you need to top it up when you do get it. You can get the Opal card from 7-Eleven, which is a convenience store that you can find literally everywhere in Sydney. Super easy to navigate around. Just download Google Maps or City Mapper and you'll be able to transport yourself around Sydney very easily. Trust me, I was daunted by it at first, especially because I was by myself, but it's very, very easy to get around. If you get a chance, do the Coogee to Bondi walk. It is absolutely gorgeous. I remember I went whale spotting at Coogee Beach and actually could see the whales in the distance. Also, if you're into surfing, need I say more? You've got the most amazing beaches around Sydney that you can go surfing. After leaving Sydney, I went to Byron Bay. I do just want to mention right now that if you are interested in learning surfing, you can go to Spot X Surf Camp. I will leave it linked in the description box. If you're into that and it's something that you want to do while you're in Australia, I highly suggest going to Spot X. Back to Byron Bay. I didn't know what to expect when I got to Byron Bay because it was so hyped up among backpackers, and it's one of these iconic Australian places that you just have to visit while you're there. It's full of hippies, it's full of surfers, it's exactly what you would imagine it as, and there are some incredibly beautiful places in Byron Bay. Of course, you've got the beaches, you've got the lighthouse, which is really stunning, especially at sunset, and you've got the Nimbin day tour, which is a little sort of side quest you can do while you're in Byron Bay if you fancy getting out for a day trip. Also, if you're into nudist beaches, there's a beach called King's Beach, which I can highly recommend. The nightlife in Byron Bay was bizarre, that's all I can say about it. When it comes to staying in hostels in Byron Bay, I can only recommend two because that's where I stayed. I stayed at the YHA and I stayed at Wake Up Hostel. YHA Hostel is very, very central. It's very relaxed and quiet. So if you're someone that likes a bit of peace and quiet, low-key, chilled out vibes with other people in the hostel, it's really comfortable as well. The rooms are lovely and it's got a pool. Definitely recommend that if you don't want a crazy party hostel. If you're into parties, I recommend Wake Up Hostel. It's farther outside of the town, but it offers a free shuttle bus from the bus stop in Byron Bay to the hostel and back multiple times a day, so you're not going to have to walk to and from town. Wake Up Hostel was stunning. One of the most beautiful hostels I stayed at along the east coast. The rooms were like hotel rooms. Everyone who was staying there was really friendly. As a solo backpacker, I was very worried that I wasn't going to make any friends, but I made some great friends in Wake Up Hostel. It's right on the beach and you can rent bikes and surfboards from the hostel, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And you can bring your own alcohol to the hostel as well, so everyone has like barbecues and parties in the evening, and it was just a really nice atmosphere, so I highly recommend Wake Up Hostel. I would recommend staying in Byron Bay for 3 to 4 nights. After Byron Bay, I made my way up to Queensland and Surfers Paradise. I was so excited to get to Surfers Paradise because it has one of the most stunning and unique skylines that I have ever seen. The skyscrapers are right on the beach and it just looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. It is so beautiful, and when you're driving in on the bus you can see it in the distance and it just looks like paradise, and it really is paradise. I would say Surfers Paradise is one of the more touristy and party locations on the east coast. So if you're someone that is into relaxing, spend maybe 1 to 2 days in Surfers Paradise, but if you like to go out a lot, maybe 3 to 4 days, you can rest assured that there's great nightlife in Surfers Paradise and there's always bar crawls happening. I went on, I think, 3 nights out while I was in Surfers Paradise, so it was definitely somewhere that I spent the majority of my time hungover. And if you're a thrill seeker, I highly suggest checking out the theme parks and water parks in and around Surfers Paradise. You've got Movieworld, you've got Dreamworld and SeaWorld and plenty of other options, but I went to Movieworld and had one of the best days ever. It was so much fun. I think the ticket cost me 90 Australian dollars, which is a little bit expensive for one day. However, it was a theme park. Now, hostel wise, I only have one recommendation for Surfers Paradise, and if you can stay at this hostel, I highly suggest it. It's called Bunk. It's just amazing. I had the best time there. The rooms are fantastic. If you're in a dorm room, you actually have this little private booth, so you have a little bit more space to yourself and it's not like you're all packed in like sardines. Also, each room has a little door that opens out onto the pool, and it's just beautiful. The kitchen is fantastic. You get free tea and coffee 24/7. After spending a few days in Surfers Paradise, it's time to move on, and the next stop is Brisbane. Brisbane is the third largest city in Australia, and let me tell you, it's absolutely stunning. A lot of backpackers tend to only spend one day in Brisbane because it's just overnight stops along the east coast, but I would suggest that you spend 2 days, maybe even 3 days exploring Brisbane. It has a lot to offer, and people don't really hype it up as much as other places on the east coast, but I really loved it. It's a huge city. There's lots to do. There's museums, art galleries, there's the city hall, which you can do a free walking tour of, amazing places to go shopping, food everywhere, great nightlife. And the South Bank, I think, is one of the most gorgeous places that I've explored in a city in Australia. There's a man-made beach overlooking the skyscraper. If you can get good weather or go there for the sunset, I swear it was like magical. It was so nice. Again, because I only stayed in Brisbane for a couple of days, I only managed to stay in one hostel, but I can recommend 2. So the YHA is really chilled, really relaxed. It has one of the best views of Brisbane from the rooftop. There's also a pool. Then there's Nomads, which is right in the city centre. It's very central, and it's more of a party hostel, but I will say that it's also kind of run down and not very nice. And then after Brisbane, you're back to the beachy Paradise Islands, and we are off to Noosa. Noosa is a beachy paradise located in southern Queensland, Sunshine Coast. Known for its absolutely glorious sandy beaches, blue waters, blue skies, surf, and the insta-famous rock pools. Also, if you fancy a bit of adventure, you can canoe through the Noosa Everglades. I stayed at the Halls Lodge YHA, which is sort of in the middle of like the jungle, it feels like. It's up this huge hill, which was a real pain to walk up with your backpack. But the hostel itself was pretty cool. It was a very communal vibe. Everyone was super sociable and lovely, and there is a bar in the hostel, but it's more of a family bar, and it's definitely not a crazy party hostel. If you want a crazy party hostel, you stay at Nomads, which is a lot more central in Noosa, whereas the Halls Lodge is closer to the beach, which is also great. But Nomads is where you go if you want a party. I know that there's a club in Nomads where I spent the majority of my evenings in Noosa. Both hostels are absolutely fantastic, and you will have a great time wherever you stay. I recommend staying in Noosa for 3 nights. After Noosa, I made my way to Rainbow Beach, which is where the excursion to Fraser Island takes place from. This was one of the highlights of my whole trip, and probably one of the more expensive aspects of your trip as well. There isn't a hell of a lot to do in Rainbow Beach alone, but the reason that so many backpackers go there is to visit Fraser Island, which is of course the largest sand island in Australia. It's one of the best things that you can do when you travel the east coast, and likelihood is you've already heard of Fraser Island and it's probably already on your itinerary, but I'm of course going to talk about it as it is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Australia. I myself did the Dingo's 3-night 4x4 tour of Fraser Island and had an amazing time and would highly recommend it. Let me just check how much it costs. It's 499 Australian dollars for the 3-night tour, which is very reasonable for what is included in the tour. So breakfast, lunch and dinner while you're on the tour. It covers your insurance for driving the 4x4, travel and transport in and around the island. Fraser Island is so much bigger than I anticipated. You are going to spend most of your time driving to and from the different locations on Fraser Island, and it has like a whole ecosystem. So there's deserts, lakes, there's of course the crystal clear Lake Mackenzie, which is one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen. There's jungles, there's sand dunes, there's dingoes. While you're on Fraser Island, you camp out under the stars. It's so magical. It makes a really nice change from staying in hostels. It's unmissable. Moving on to Early Beach. Early Beach is fantastic. So in and of itself, it's a great little town. Maybe you can do a skydive. It's got lots of adventurous, thrill-seeking activities there that you can do. There's whitewater rafting, and of course there is the boat tours of the Whitsunday Islands, which is another big expensive tour to go on, but is highly recommended because the Whitsundays are unbelievable, out of this world. I stayed at Base and Nomads Hostel when I went to Early Beach, and the hostel itself was kind of strange. Like, all the rooms were in bungalows. I wasn't a big fan of the rooms at Base and Nomads. They were very run down, but I did have friends who stayed at Magnum's, and it is really, really cool. So Magnum's is basically a jungle with a hostel inside it, and it was absolutely amazing. So I would recommend staying at Magnum's. There is so much to do in Early Beach, especially if you like to drink. There are bar crawls, there are so many clubs and pubs along Early Beach. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Whitsunday Islands. There are so many boat tours that you can choose from. There are 1-day tours, there are 3-day tours, there are luxury cruises. I myself thought it would be a great idea to do the party boat, which is the Atlantic Clipper, and I regret it. It wasn't worth the money. I definitely didn't get the full Whitsunday experience. If you want to see all of the best parts of the Whitsunday Islands, I would avoid the party boats. Even though it is fun, you're paying quite a lot of money and you can see a lot more on some of the other tours. I have a couple of friends who did the Ride to Paradise tour, which is essentially where you travel around the Whitsundays and stay in a luxury millionaire resort, and I've heard amazing things about that. You can look to pay between $400 and $600 for the majority of the tours. Some of them may be a lot cheaper if you're doing a 1-day tour, and some of them might be a lot more expensive. I recommend staying for 2 nights in Early Beach, and then your Whitsunday tour, and then you move on to Townsville and Magnetic Island. This is not a necessary stop on the East Coast. In fact, I almost forgot it when I was writing down my notes because it was so quiet and there was so little to do there. Magnetic Island is a really fantastic place because obviously you've been drinking and doing a lot of activities on Early Beach, and then you come to Magnetic Island and it is so zen, it is so chill, it is so gorgeous. And Magnetic Island is where you see all of those photos with the topless cars, the little tiny cars that drive around the island that you can rent out. I stayed at the YHA, which was one thing that I will say about Magnetic Island is that unless you rent one of those cars, it is very hard to get around and the buses take forever because it is very mountainous. The roads are really windy. The YHA also has a wildlife park inside it, so you can get your pictures with koalas, you can hold snakes, you can see some amazing wildlife there. Apart from that, I don't really have a lot more to say about Magnetic Island. The next and final stop on the East Coast, Cairns. Cairns will either be your last or your first stop along the East Coast, and my god, it will break you. So I stayed at a resort called Gilligan's. Gilligan's is very, very well known among backpackers as the ultimate party hostel of Australia, and it definitely lives up to that reputation. I think I was only there for 10 minutes. I had enough time to take my bag off before everyone in my dorm room started drinking games and we started getting ready to go to the club, which is inside the hostel, with nightly events, pole dancing, wet t-shirt competitions, bingo, karaoke, all sorts of different crazy activities that you can take part in. And there's a restaurant which offers really cheap all-you-can-eat buffet, really good breakfast, and every single night Gilligan's offers activities that you can take part in, and everyone that stays at the hostel gets a free drink at 6 p.m. It's amazing. So I definitely suggest staying at Gilligan's when you get to Cairns, but that kind of lifestyle can get really boring after a while, and I ended up having to move out of Gilligan's because I ended up losing my bank card in the club, and someone decided to use my bank card to buy hundreds of dollars worth of McDonald's, so that's not ideal. The rooms in Gilligan's are really nice, I will say that. It was one of the most comfy hostels that I stayed in. There's a gorgeous pool and courtyard area with like daily pool party. There are many other hostels around Cairns that you can stay in that will be a lot more relaxed, a lot more civilized, and a lot more low-key. There's skydiving, there's the Daintree Rainforest, there's Uncle Brian's tours. I did the Uncle Brian's waterfall tour, which I can recommend. Was a great day. Do not do it hungover. Cairns is also where you can do your snorkeling or scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is absolutely fantastic, beautiful, and once in a lifetime experience, and I definitely recommend doing the tour that I did. I can't exactly remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'm going to link it down below and pop it up on the screen. The tour we did was absolutely mind-blowing. The food we got was incredible. Like, I remember trips based on how good or bad their food is, and the food on the Great Barrier Reef trip was beautiful. We even saw stingrays and sharks while we were diving in the Great Barrier Reef, and I was not expecting that. There is also a lagoon in the city centre, which is a really interesting place to go and sit and just sunbathe and chill. So, okay, we've covered all the main destinations along the east coast, and I've talked a bit in depth about the activities and the hostel recommendations. So now I'm going to move on to some general tips and advice for planning your east coast trip. Book your hostels in advance and book your bigger activities such as the Welcome to Travel tour, the Intro Travel tour, the Fraser Island trip and the Whitsundays trip in advance. Make sure you allow yourself a couple of free days without any tours or without any trips planned, because you will need just a day to chill on the beach or just a day to wash your laundry, because sometimes your itinerary is so packed that you just don't have time for some of those things. If you just spend the entire time on the east coast going from place to place, party to party, trip to trip, you're going to burn yourself out, and no one wants that. Make sure you pack earbuds, eye mask, adapter and an underwater camera. The earbuds are going to save your ass when you're in a hostel with someone who snores. Some hostels will have free earbuds at reception, but you can't be guaranteed of that. The eye mask will save you when your roommate decides to get up at 3 a.m, turn the lights on and start packing their bag. It happens and it's horrible. So save yourself the stress. I recommend taking between 2,000 and 3,000 Australian dollars spending money for your nights out, food, general travel costs, day-to-day life. This is the money that I would have in my account to spend on the east coast after I've booked all my tours, after I've booked all my hostels and after I've paid for the bus ticket. Aside from spending money, if you're planning on staying on in Australia after your east coast trip, I recommend having 2,000 Australian dollars in a savings account as a nest egg for when you finish the east coast, so you don't end up broke. Avoid staying in the same hostel chain all the way up the east coast. It's nice to have variety, and whether or not you're someone who likes a more chilled out vibe or a party vibe, I definitely recommend a mix of both. Say yes to all opportunities and say yes to the free hostel activities. This is a great way to meet new people, and being spontaneous is fun. It's always the right time. Whether you are over 25 or you feel like you might be a bit too old to travel along the east coast, you're not. One of the misconceptions about backpacking up the east coast is that it's very popular among 18-year-olds, which is very true, but you will be very surprised that there is a huge diverse age range that travel along the east coast, and I just want to let you know that no matter what age you are, you'll have an amazing time and you'll fit right in, so don't let that put you off. Don't eat a full space cake while you're on the Nimbin trip. Nimbin is known as the place where everyone smokes weed and gets really high, and my friend would like you to know, and me as well, would like you to know, don't bite off more than you can chew. Keep track of your budget, whether you just write down your daily spending in a diary or whether you have a travel money card such as Monzo or Revolut, which can help you track your spending. Keep your eye on that money, sis. Push yourself to see as much nature and beauty while you're on the east coast as you can. Sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of not doing day trips and not going out and seeing the places because you're too hungover or because you're too tired or because you've got no clean laundry, but just make sure that you push yourself to do those things. I also reached out on the Backpacking Australia Facebook page and got some feedback from you guys who are planning to come on the east coast, and I got some really good points that I didn't think of including in this video, so thank you to everyone who gave me feedback. I'm just going to talk about some of the comments I got on my post, and some of it is really useful, especially if you're planning on driving the east coast and camping along the way, which is an alternative to staying in hostels. Some people may choose to travel the east coast in a car or a camper van. It's really common as well for a lot of backpackers to do the east coast that way, and it is a lot cheaper than paying for accommodation, especially if you're going to split petrol and fuel with someone else. There are a number of apps and websites that you can use that will help and assist you in finding places to camp, will help you find local petrol stations, toilets, taps. So WikiCamps is an app that you can download, which is a user-generated databases of all of the camping sites, free and paid in Australia and New Zealand. Similarly, Campermate is a free app which is a database of nearby points of interest such as public toilets, dump stations, accommodation, rubbish bins, local travel tips and more. And there is an app called Fuel Map Australia which will show you where the filling and petrol stations are when you're on your journey. All really useful, all essential if you're going to be driving long distances and camping. That brings us to the end of my East Coast travel guide. I hope that you learned something from this video, and I hope that you're feeling inspired to travel the East Coast. If you enjoyed this video, I really hope that you will subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers this year, and I need your help to get there. And if you enjoyed my travel content and you want to see more, I'd really appreciate your support, and also give this video a big thumbs up. Please do follow me on all my social media at GayAstray. I can't wait to connect with you, and I can't wait to see all your East Coast Australia travel pics, so make sure you get in touch with me. Have a fantastic day and enjoy planning your East Coast adventure. All the links and all the videos that I mentioned are in the description box, so you can find them super easy. And that's it. Have an absolutely brilliant day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.